and I upset Johnny Liston, and I just turned 22 years old. I must be the greatest. I told the world, I talk to God every day. If God's with the king, no matter you're just the same. I shook up the world. I shook up the world. I shook up the world. I shook up the world.
I said, can I be a legend? Search your soul and answer me this question. Do you think I have what it takes to be great, but still be humble and learn from my mistakes? Shit.
Good night, everyone, and welcome. So sorry for the late start and the earlier technical difficulties, but I think we have everything sorted out now. Welcome to a very special episode, and if you've been seeing all of our previews, then you know what time it is and who is on. But if you don't know, I will. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, man. How are you? Thank you for having me on.
Always, guy. So before we get right into it, Payton, please tell the guys what you do and how do we find you?
So I host a podcast called The Payton Doyle Show. It drops every weekend, Saturday or Sunday. You can find me on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, basically anywhere you could get a podcast. You could also find me on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, at Payton Doyle Show. Just my name.
That is it, just Payton. For you.
I mean, man, that guy had a certified Hall of Fame career, maybe top 5 all time. 5,000-yard seasons. No other quarterback in history has had 1. All other quarterbacks combined have 7 total. Incredible statistics. When he came to New Orleans in their times of struggle, he brought a lot of hope back to New Orleans. He did a lot of things for that city. And also, I think another thing that is kind of underrated about Drew Brees is that he was one of those guys like Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield. These quarterbacks that are like 6 foot flat or under should all be giving him thanks because he proved to everyone that your quarterback doesn't need to be a 6'5", big, strong arm pocket passer. You could be 6 foot and still be a very effective quarterback in the NFL. And he showed that, and he paved the way for a lot of these, not so tall guys.
For me, the legacy is twofold. One, I think he kind of redefined what accuracy is, because as he's first all-time in completion percentage and first all-time in completions, as well, obviously, as passing yards. At some point, Tom Brady obviously is going to pass that. But the successive seasons or so many seasons of throwing for 70% or more, it's just ridiculous. Like when we look back and we think of the Montanas and the Elways, and we thought they were accurate, and Dan Marino. Drew Brees says, no. This is what I mean about ball placement. Obviously, it is, and I know knock on Drew, but it's a lot easier to place the ball when a lot of your balls aren't going very deep. But he really redefined, ball placement and ball accuracy for me. But the point you touched on, really, that defines the legacy for me, is what he did for the city of New Orleans. It's well documented what they went through after, Hurricane Katrina. And no one would have expected a lot from a guy, as you said, 6 feet, probably less, to coming off of shoulder surgery. Miami passed on him because, of that hurt shoulder, figured that he failed the physical. And then for him to give the city hope, to lead them to a Super Bowl, because I want to say before Drew Brees, I think the Saints had 7 winning seasons, if memory serves me correct. And this guy has 9 in his career by himself, lead them to the Super Bowl, and then the humanitarian efforts that he leads in New Orleans, because even in his retirement speech, he says, I am done with football, but I'm not done with New Orleans. This just a class act of a human being. So with that said, Payton, this is obviously a first ballot Hall of Famer leaving. Do you think, considering the last 4 seasons, how they ended?
No, I think he certainly made the correct decision in retiring. It was obvious that the past few years you would see he would start off the season very hot, and you could see that aging arm got a little bit tired towards the back end of the season. for the past like 3 years. And it was obvious in that playoff game. You could see it in his eyes. You could see it in his heart and the way that he was acting when he walked off the field, that he knew he was done. And once you know you're done, there's no reason to keep going. If he feels like he had a great career, which he did, and he feels like he's done playing and he wants to get on to broadcasting, being with his family or helping the community, then he should do that.
When I look, and I agree with you, and I thought that even entering this season, I figured it would be his last. And I thought there was a possibility, especially after those broken ribs, he may not even return during last season. But when I look at, that's starting obviously with the Minneapolis Miracle, the awful no call against the Los Angeles Rams. Then he gets, no call with Kyle Rudolph possibly pushing off to get that game-winning touchdown. And then the 3 interceptions against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't know if, for me, and I've never played sports, obviously, at that level, but I don't know if, as a competitor, that I would want to go out on such a note. But I guess, as you said, when it's time, it really is time. So quickly, Payton, before we segue out of the Saints situation,
Wow. Statistics wise, he is definitely top 5. But the problem is you have to take into account winning as well. And while he did win a lot, there was a lot of postseason disappointments. Some of those were not on him. Some of those were, like you said, the Minneapolis Miracle and the no calls as of recent. But I'd say you definitely have to put him top 10, at least top 10, maybe even top 5. Like you said, redefined accuracy, all these seasons of over 70%, 5 seasons of 5,000 yards passing, and he led the Saints to a Super Bowl title, which is something that is very overlooked because, like you said, before Drew Brees, the Saints were the Aints. They were not doing much in the NFL, and they were honestly the laughingstock of the NFL for a little bit. So he brought them into contention, and he brought a losing team and gave them a winning culture for sure. So I think you definitely have to put Drew Brees at least top 10.
I won't be the guy to piss on Drew Brees immediately after his retirement. I will say, with all his statistics and all his winning and the Super Bowl title, there is one thing missing for me that stops me for sure for putting him in the top 5, and that is a regular season MVP. So when you look at Tom Brady, who has multiple MVPs, Joe Montana, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, John Elway, these are all guys who have regular season MVPs. So that's why, if you want to talk about Mount Rushmore, Drew Brees may not make it there for me. But top 10, there may be the case he may not, because then you get to the Brett Favre's and I don't know. But I'd say probably 9 or 10 for me, but I'm not here to piss on Drew Brees tonight. You wanted to add something there, Payton?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. That's the rank these quarterbacks top 5, top 10. It's like, you look at the list of quarterbacks all time and you're like, okay, who are we leaving off, right? Who are we leaving off? Because there's been plenty of great quarterbacks throughout the history of this amazing game in the NFL. So who are you leaving off the top 10? You don't know, but I would have to sit down and see a list of top guys and try to pick 10. And that would be probably some of the hardest decisions ever. I think the next guy in New Orleans is going to be Jameis Winston. I think it was Jameis Winston all along. I don't want to be kind of that guy that reads too much into things, but I do think towards the end of the game when the camera cut to Drew Brees talking to Jameis on the sideline, he was definitely saying, hey, this was probably it for me, and I think you're up next. Because I think the Saints want Jameis all along. I understand people are like, well, why would they start Taysom when Drew went down? And here's why. They didn't want the league to know what Jameis Winston was yet. They didn't want Jameis Winston to go out and get big money elsewhere in free agency this year. They wanted to hide him as kind of their secret weapon going into next year. So they put in Taysom Hill because they knew he had him under contract. So they weren't going to lose Taysom Hill in free agency. They knew that if they started Jameis, he would have drawn a lot of attention from other teams this year in free agency, and he might have signed elsewhere going into next year. I think Jameis Winston has been, since he signed there, the next franchise quarterback for the New Orleans Saints.
That 4-year, $140 million extension that Taysom Hill just signed is just a red herring. Well, I mean, basically, and I think they said it themselves, it was just to get them under the salary cap because apparently all 4 years are voidable. And if you're signing a contract that all 4 years are voidable, that tells me, yeah, there is really no situation where we're paying this guy over $30 million a year. And that'd be a head scratcher to be paying Taysom Hill that much money, especially after we saw last season. I do believe and agree with you, Payton. I do believe that that next guy is Jameis Winston, and for the same reasons that you said. But if I'm Chicago and I know I can't get Russell Wilson, I would be pressing hard for somebody like Jameis Winston, and I'd actually try to drive up the price just to make the Saints sweat and have to pay more than they anticipate. But I do believe in Jameis. But on this show, I'm going to keep a slight hope that the Saints, although as a Packers fan, I really don't want to see that. But that's a conversation for another day. You wanted to add something there, Payton?
I think you should really worry about him going to Chicago as a Packers fan, less of New Orleans. I think if he goes to Chicago and that defense stays intact, that's going to be dangerous. But that's a topic for another day.
Well, no, I wouldn't be too worried about that simply because I suspect they're going to have to give up a lot. And although I've been on record as saying teams don't trade players for the want of players anymore, I suspect any trade that Chicago starts with has to begin with Khalil Mack and Kyle Fuller. And can they afford to do that and then still be good? Who knows? Because the offensive weapons outside of Allen Robinson are really not there. So since we brought up the Chicago Bears, that gives me the perfect segue into my own Green Bay Packers. I was a bit shocked, and I talked to you on your own show, and that take has not aged very well now. I expected Aaron Jones, to leave in free agency, but guess what? That didn't happen. They signed him to a 4-year, $48 million deal. Payton, two things. Are you surprised at the signing, and do you agree with it?
Am I surprised? No, because if Aaron Jones wants to win, what better place to go than a place that you're accustomed to, you are very comfortable with, you've been playing there for your whole career, and you have Aaron Rodgers on your team and a great offense with a great offensive system and a head coach that I believe doesn't really give enough credit, get enough credit because he has Aaron Rodgers on his team. So people say that he just inherited a great quarterback. But I definitely think that Aaron Jones did make the right decision. I'm not surprised that he went back because it's very comfortable going there. I mean, you could go to a place like Miami, but you have no idea how Tua is going to be. You know, you have Aaron Rodgers at an MVP level right now. And I think it was a good move. I think, Aaron Jones is a guy who I believe is 4th in total touchdowns since 2018. I don't know if that's true, but I think that is pretty true. He's a guy that is a game changer in this league. He's a pass catcher out of the backfield. He's an extremely dynamic playmaker. And I think you want a guy like that on your team. Now, it does make me question, though, why would they draft A.J. Dillon in the 2nd round last year if they knew they were going to re-sign Aaron Jones this year? I don't know. That draft for the Packers last year just was a big head scratcher for me. But I do think bringing Aaron Jones back was a good move for the Packers, and I think it's going to keep them playing at a high level this year, especially on offense.
To put on my Mike Gutekunst hat, and I try not to, but I'm going to try to explain away, I guess, and I really shouldn't. I guess the A.J. Dillon 2nd round pick last year was because they figured they may not be able to take or get back Aaron Jones. Definitely not Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams because both are free agents, and Jamal Williams announced on his social media today that he enjoyed his time in Green Bay and that time has come to an end. In Matt LaFleur's offense, which is, he's one of the disciples of Kyle Shanahan's dad, Mike Shanahan, the Super Bowl winning head coach in the days of Terrell Davis and John Elway. It has always been a situation of not one bell cow bat, but splitting of duties. So I suspect the reason for having A.J. Dillon was, as you know, Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams do split carries in that backfield. And they figured one was going to leave, so it was to replace the other, I guess. I figured it would have been Aaron Jones to go, especially after he signed Drew Rosenhaus as an agent, and everyone knows Drew Rosenhaus is not the guy to give team-friendly deals. But Rosenhaus is on record as saying, as you correctly said as well, Aaron Jones always wanted to come back. And as much as it sounds like 4 years, $48 million, the deal is apparently closer to $9.5 million in average money per year. The $12 million per is via incentives, so he has to, obviously make Pro Bowls, the team has to win a Super Bowl, et cetera, for him to get that max of $12 million per. And A.J. Dillon, I guess, provides something additional to him because Aaron Jones is more like I want to say, even though he can run between the tackles, he is kind of like a Alvin Kamara, a scat back, who is exceptional when you put him out wide. And you've seen situations where, and against the Los Angeles Rams, that formation where they have in kind of like a pistol or a shotgun formation where they have A.J. Dillon on one side and Aaron Jones on the other of Aaron Rodgers, and then to find out if you're in man or zone, you then send Aaron Jones out as a wide receiver, and obviously no linebacker can match up with him. So I guess that is to answer your question. I still don't like the A.J. Dillon pick up in the second round if you're signing back Aaron Jones. But the mere fact that it is closer to $9.5 million per, more so than 12, I absolutely love the idea. I told you on the show I thought he was going to go for certain. But, with the production, I think over the last 2 seasons, the only running back or the only player who has more touchdowns than Aaron Jones is none other than Derrick Henry in Tennessee. So this is the guy who is a huge, huge piece of our offense. So before I continue down the road, Payton, I know Neil must be behind the scenes cursing me because I did skip a segment. And I think it was just in an eager or rush to get to my Packers. Talking about free agency, there has been one team who has not wasted a single second as free agency open. And it's kind of quite of a surprise because that's not what they do. And I am referring to none other than the New England Patriots. And what we have seen so far, if you have not been watching, well, hold on to your seats or hats. The Patriots have signed in the first day of free agency Matthew Judon, Jonnu Smith, Jalen Mills, Devon Gotcha, Nelson Aguilar, and up to this show, Kendrick Bourne. So are you surprised, Payton?
I'm not surprised that Bill Belichick is making some big moves this offseason. Like we know, Bill Belichick goes into every year planning to win the most games possible. Bill Belichick never will tank. So while I do think he's in need of a young quarterback, especially going into next year, he is not going to try and just tank. He's going to try to make the playoffs this year. And honestly, you look at the guys that they were missing last year. I believe Dante Hightower and Patrick Chung opted out because of COVID. Those guys presumably are coming back. Then you have all those pieces that you just added on defense, and you added 2 pretty solid wide receivers. Maybe another wide receiver falls to you. I believe they're at the 15th overall pick in the draft. Maybe Cam Newton would look a whole lot better in a better situation next year and in the second year in the same offense. So we'll see, but I'm not surprised because the Patriots did go in having the cap space to be able to do this. And I'm honestly glad that they're doing this because it's something that's well needed, because you don't have a Tom Brady guy that's going to elevate the play of the people around him anymore. You have Cam Newton, who, while he's still very dynamic, is not the passer that he used to be at all. He still is always banged up a little bit, and he's going to need a lot of help if you want to make a playoff run. And I think Bill Belichick noticed that last year, and I'm glad that he went out and got the help that I believe that Cam deserves.
Well, if Cam doesn't perform, having added Jonnu Smith and Kendrick Bourne, then I think he has no one else to blame but himself. So I guess that voids my next question, because I was going to ask you, do you agree with the moves?
Yeah, I 100% agree with the moves. I especially love the Jonnu Smith move. He had a really, really great last year in Tennessee. He was really valuable to that team. Tennessee's lost a few key parts this offseason, especially now that Corey Davis is gone. They cut Malcolm Butler, and now Jonnu Smith is gone as well. So we'll see how they're doing next year. But Jonnu Smith signing, we all know Bill Belichick loves his tight ends, and that offense with Josh McDaniels, those tight ends really thrive in that system. And I think Cam is going to love having a reliable tight end as well, as we saw in Carolina with Greg Olsen. So we'll see how it goes. But I really, really love that Jonnu Smith signing. And I love all these signings, honestly. I think the Patriots now, they really, really are starting to look like a lot better team than they were last year.
So with that being said, it would appear then that the Patriots are not a lock to take a quarterback in that first round. And we know there are a ton of quarterbacks in this first round that are slated to go early. But let's look at a team who may still take one, even though Sam Darnold is under contract there. What do the Jets do with that second overall pick, Payton? And is there any chance, I know your feelings on this, but is there any chance that this is a non-quarterback pick at number 2?
Well, if they choose to stay at number 2, I say odds are they're going to take a quarterback and they're going to trade away Sam Darnold. Now, if they want to keep Sam Darnold, there is a chance that there could be a non-quarterback pick there. Obviously, you're looking at guys like Penei Sewell. Maybe even you could go get a wide receiver at number 2, but that's a little bit of a stretch. I don't know about that. But you could definitely get a good offensive lineman at number 2 overall, and nobody's going to freak out about that. You could never have too many offensive linemen on your team. But I definitely think that with the second overall pick, the Jets really should consider trading back with the Carolina Panthers at number 8 overall, because the Panthers, like I said, they just seem like they're thirsty for a quarterback this offseason. Every report coming out of there is that they don't like Teddy Bridgewater. Matt Rule's not sold on him. It's not the guy that Matt Rule wanted, and he wants to go get his guy in this draft. So they're hungry for a quarterback. You trade back with them. You're now at 8th overall. I think you take Kyle Pitts. I think Kyle Pitts is the second best prospect in this draft behind Trevor Lawrence. I think he's an absolute game changer, and I think the tight end position is something that is completely undervalued in the NFL. When you have a great tight end and a young quarterback, it takes a lot of pressure off of him. I think Sam Darnold could really break out this year if they make the right moves, and I honestly think they should give Sam Darnold another year. The situation in New York has never been ideal for him. Now, I understand Robert Saleh might not want him, and I agree. If Robert Saleh doesn't want Sam Darnold, Robert Saleh has to go get his guy. But if Robert Saleh is not sold on any of these guys in this draft outside of Trevor Lawrence, because he's not getting them, I'm not sold on any of these guys outside of Trevor Lawrence. So I say they should trade back, keep Sam Darnold for another year. If he's bad, odds are your team's going to be bad again next year. You'll have another top 5, top 10 pick, and there's going to be plenty of quarterback talent every single year to be able to draft. So I say you go get your franchise tight end. I know that sounds weird, a franchise tight end, but it's a real thing in the NFL these days. George Kittle, Travis Kelce, these guys are game changers. I think Kyle Pitts is a guy who could be up there with them. So you go get a game changer, and then next year, if your quarterback's still bad, you go get a new quarterback.
Now, I am one who believes that the Jets should get a quarterback with that number 2, but not Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, or Matt Jones. Yeah, I'm switching up a bit. I think they should go to Houston for that quarterback with that number 2 overall pick, and that guy none other than Deshaun Watson. I think that is the very, very first thing the New York franchise should be looking at with that number 2 overall pick. And anything else that Houston really wants. If they want 2 more first, yeah, sure. So I'd package number 2 overall, 2 additional first, and Sam Darnold, if it means netting me Deshaun Watson. And they can imagine, I've spoken about this at length, Deshaun Watson with a decent running back and that, Mike Shanahan type offense, that zone running scheme. Because as we've seen, Aaron Rodgers returning to MVP form, Matt Ryan being an MVP, Jared Goff getting to a Super Bowl. We have seen, and also Jimmy Garoppolo getting to the Super Bowl. We have seen what that zone running scheme offense does for quarterbacks. It is very, very quarterback friendly. So, yeah, that would be my first option. And, yeah, Payton, you've sold me. I am with you on, if you're not high on these quarterbacks, then trade back. Because there are teams who are very, very thirsty to get one of these quarterbacks. And that allows me the perfect segue into our next segment. Payton, who do you see trying to slide into the top 10? Because we've mentioned these quarterbacks before. We have Zach Wilson slated to go number 2 overall. Justin Fields, Trey Lance. Do you see a team, or which team is going to try to trade into the top 10 to get one of these 4 gunslingers?
I don't know if any team is going to trade into the top 10. Right now, I'm looking at the draft order right here. You have Jacksonville could draft a quarterback. New York could draft a quarterback. Miami's not drafting a quarterback. Atlanta could draft a quarterback. Cincinnati's not drafting a quarterback. And then outside of that, you have Philadelphia. They might not like Jalen Hurts. Detroit might just have Jared Goff for a year. They might just be using him as a bridge. You never know. Carolina definitely could get a quarterback. Denver, they might not like Drew Lock. Then you have Dallas, who they have their guy. But there's plenty of teams that could potentially draft a quarterback right here in the top 10 right now. And I'm not sure if they're going to trade back with anyone. Obviously, outside of the top 10, you have San Francisco. I've heard a lot of rumors with Trey Lance linked to them. But I think Jimmy G's their guy, so I don't think they're going to trade in. New England could trade in, but I don't know why they would do that. I think they would never do that. Like, that's not the Patriot way. Then you have Washington. Washington's a team that I think should consider trading into the top 10 for a quarterback. Because honestly, I don't know if they're going to get that much out of free agency this year. You look at guys like Mitchell Trubisky, who's on the market. It's not that great. You could definitely try to trade into the top 10 there. But what do they have to give up for a top 10 pick? The real question to that is, what are these teams wanting for a top 10 pick? Because there's tons of highly recruited quarterbacks in this draft coming up. So we'll see. But I honestly don't see any team trading into the top 10 this year, which could be a little bit of a surprise. But I think the top 10 picks, those are all the quarterback needy teams. There's definitely a correlation between having a franchise quarterback and winning games, so you're not in the top 10.
So I have a little surprise. I actually think Atlanta, who is choosing at 4, right? Mm-hmm. I have a sneaky feeling Atlanta is actually going to try to move up to 2 and to take Zach Wilson, because I honestly felt they made a mistake last trade deadline, not moving on from Matt Ryan. And this is not to say I don't like Matt Ryan. I don't think he's a serviceable quarterback, it's a good quarterback. And especially with Arthur Smith, former Tennessee offensive coordinator, going to Atlanta, who basically, again, runs that same offense, who runs the Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur offense. I think you're going to, if he stays with Arthur Smith, I think you're going to see a return to form to Matt Ryan, where you're arguably talking about a top 6, top 7 quarterback in the NFL. But the amount of money you owe him, and it's not a lot, but the cap hit, with a team that is not built to win right now, especially on that defense, I thought a situation where teams that were looking like the same LA Rams, you have obviously Indianapolis Colts, who now have their guy in Carson Wentz, or at least they think they have their guy in Carson Wentz. I thought that these places were prime prospects or prime trade targets to move on from Matt Ryan and then take your draft capital and get your guy in this draft. Because while I know you're not high on the quarterbacks after Trevor Lawrence, I will say I am a huge Zach Wilson guy for what he's been able to do with non-NFL talent per se in BYU. I know you also showed me the coin in that, well, they're not playing huge NFL talent there in BYU either. But I think his ability to throw off center without a great platform, I think that is going to translate well into the NFL, and him not needing wide receivers to be scheme open, a la Matt Jones, a la Justin Fields. I think that also is going to serve well, especially as a high pick going to a team without much talent. I want to believe that Atlanta is going to be the surprise to trade up from 4 to 2 to get Zach Wilson, or to be sure that they get Zach Wilson. I see a situation also, as you kind of mentioned, Washington moving in, because I want to ask you, and this is an honest question, if Washington doesn't get their quarterback in the draft, who are they going to get in free agency?
Mitch Trubisky. I think I know. Everyone's down on Mitch. But if you want to take a risk on a young guy, put him around a good defense with Terry McLaurin, you have a solid running game with a good head coach, you take a chance on. He had talent and he did win games. He made the playoffs twice in Chicago. Now, I understand he had great things around him, but the situation is very similar in Washington. You could be, if you're Ron Rivera, you could say, okay, maybe I could fix this guy and tap into his true potential. If Mitch Trubisky had confidence in himself, when he plays confidently, he looks great. He looks like a really good NFL quarterback, at least a Pro Bowl level quarterback. So I think if you want to take a chance on a guy who is young, who could turn out to be someone who could be a solid starter, maybe like a Ryan Tannehill kind of guy. Everyone was down on him in Miami, goes to Tennessee, revives his career, and now he's in a good situation. I think that next guy could be Mitchell Trubisky. And if he's bad, then like I said with the Jets, you're probably going to have a bad year again next year, and you're going to be able to get a top pick, and you're going to be able to draft a top quarterback prospect.
So don't you feel like Washington, who just won the division, is thinking, I don't want this experiment. I want to win this division, and I can't do that again with a Mitch Trubisky type?
Well, if you can't get a guy in the draft, you could either trade for Sam Darnold, who is an experiment. You could sign Mitch, who's an experiment. You could sign Jameis, who's an experiment, or you could sign Jacoby Brissett, who's an experiment. They don't really have a lot of options here because I don't think they have enough to go get Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson. And I don't think those guys would waive their no-trade clause to go to a place like Washington that hasn't been good for many, many years. So I think Washington is going to have to take a chance on whoever they get at quarterback, or they could go crazy and go try to roll with Taylor Heineke, which I don't like that decision at all. That's another guy who's an even bigger project than the guys that I just mentioned. So I think Mitch is the best possible candidate out of all the guys that are possible for Washington.
Yeah, Neil, I don't understand as a Packer show, and that's why I call this show. We've allowed a guy to talk about Mitchell Trubisky on this show. Yeah, this is awful. I'm just playing with you. So let's rank these college quarterbacks they just mentioned. In your estimation, best to the worst, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Matt Jones, best to worst.
All right, this is going to surprise some people.
Ooh,
At 2,
I like this.
All right, I have Trevor Lawrence at 1. At 2, I have Trey Lance at number 2. I think I'm serious. I have Trey Lance at number 2. I really like what I've seen out of him. I've been watching a lot of his film. He is a little inexperienced, but he never lost a game. I like guys who win games, and I understand it's not at Division I level. It's not against NFL top-notch, competition. But I do like what I see out of his arm. I think he has the strongest arm in the draft. I think he's a little bit of a project. I don't think he should be the second quarterback taken, but I think he is going to be, when it's all said and done, the second best quarterback in this draft class. Now at number 3, I have Zach Wilson for what you said. Off platform, he really has a lot of great arm talent. He's pretty athletic as well. I like what I saw out of him this year. So then at number 4, I have Justin Fields. I was not impressed when he faced really good defenses, Indiana, Northwestern, what I saw out of him, but I saw an inspiring leader, especially against Clemson in the college football playoffs. Everyone knew he was hurt, and he came in there and rallied the team around him. That's a guy I want as my franchise quarterback. I love guys who are great leaders, and I think that's probably Justin Fields' best quality is what I saw out of him this year was great and tremendous leadership. And at 5, I have Mac Jones, mainly because I don't think he does anything extraordinarily great. I think he was extremely overrated. Everyone likes to love Mac Jones. They say, oh, he's like Tom Brady. He has such a high football IQ. I'm not seeing it. I don't know how you evaluate a guy who has Najee Harris, Jaylen Waddle, Davonte Smith, and the best college football program in recent history. I don't know how you'd evaluate a guy like that. So that's why I have him at 5th. But that's my ranking for this year's quarterbacks.
So let me start with what I agree with. I agree completely with Matt Jones. When you're playing with first-round talents and Najee Harris, Jaylen Waddle, and Davonte Smith are all the first-round talents, like, you are going to look good, and these guys are wide open. So, like, how hard are the throws you making? Yes, you are playing NFL talent in the SEC, and the SEC is an extremely good and extremely tough division, but these guys are all first-round talents, and I expect them all to be first-round picks. Maybe not Najee Harris, but then again, who knows? Because by rankings, I suspect he will be the best running back and the first running back taken in this draft. So yeah, I'm there with you on Matt Jones. I was never sold. It's like I believe I could step right in with Matt Jones and it's going to look the same way. Here's where we start to differ. Trey Lance, I think, is number 4 for me because he is such a huge project, and he didn't play against NFL level talent. I don't know how to evaluate him. I agree with the physical tools. His arm talent is tremendous, but how do I evaluate that again? It's so hard, and I agree with you. The upside is tremendous, but for me, it's evaluation. Like, how are you going to look against NFL defenses? Like, I really don't know. Then for me, it's Justin Fields. I know a lot of people are sold on him, especially if you ever get the chance to talk to Adam Lewis of the Off Season Pod, he believes in Justin Fields. Like, if he had a chance to play Justin Fields in New Orleans, I think he'd take him right now. I also am not that sold on him. I think he's a guy that cannot anticipate throws, so he has to wait till somebody's open to make that throw or to pull the trigger. I agree with you though. The leadership and playing these college playoff games injured, and clearly he was hurt and banged up. And the leadership and the moxie, the toughness he showed in those situations, that is a guy you want in your locker room. But here's a point, and why I'm also not sold on Justin Fields is one of the same reasons I am not sold on Matt Jones. These programs are not known for developing quarterbacks, and that is just as simple as I can say. I do not know the last time there was a good Alabama quarterback since Sammy Baugh. I want to say Johnny Unitas is an Alabama alum, I think, maybe. And that is the last good Alabama quarterback you can think of. The same thing with Ohio State. You've seen all the time, over and over again, these Ohio State quarterbacks come overrated, and they all do not pan out. Last being Dwayne Haskins, and I just think, maybe I'm being too tough, but when you're scheming wide receivers so wide open and you are not developing quarterbacks to anticipate throws, then this is what's going to happen. Trevor Lawrence is easily number 1. There's no doubt about that. From the moment I saw him in Clemson and he beat out Kelly Bryant, I said this, like, he is the best quarterback prospect coming out of college I've seen since Andrew Luck. And I make no mistake about that. I mean, will he be as good or better than Andrew Luck? Obviously, that is left to be seen. But that's how strong they feel. So number 2 is Zach Wilson. Again, I agree with you, playing against NFL talent. But when you're not playing with NFL talent, and you're going to cringe when I say this again, he reminds me of Patrick Mahomes. Similarly, I was waiting for that response.
No. Everyone wants to get the next Patrick Mahomes. I get it. I understand it. But the reason why Patrick Mahomes is so great is because there's only one Patrick Mahomes. There's only one of them. Nobody is the next Patrick Mahomes. And Zach Wilson certainly should not be focused on being the next Patrick Mahomes. He should focus on being the first Zach Wilson. I feel like that's such a terrible, terrible thing to do to a young guy, is to compare him to the best quarterback in the NFL at the time. I think that's just... I think that the comparison's not there. I don't see it. I never understand that comparison when I hear it.
I am that guy. Yes, you're correct. You shouldn't do it. But I'm that guy that's going to make that comparison. And his ability to throw off center, off platform is amazing. But to your point, the last quarterback who people thought was like him and was drafted or overdrafted because of that is none other than Green Bay's own Jordan Love. And, well, I'm not sure what Matt LaFleur and Gutekunst were thinking when they drafted him, but I can tell you those 17 interceptions in his last year at Utah should have warned him this is not a guy. So much so, and I know Neil is going to jump at this stat, he's off screen. Jordan Love, for a guy that the Packers moved up to draft in the first round, was active for 0 games for the Packers this season, and I mean 0. Could not beat out Tim Boyle for the backup spot in none of the 16 regular season games or 2 playoff games that we played. 0. So, yes, there is something to be said about trying to compare quarterback to arguably the greatest talent at the position we've ever seen. Speaking about tough evaluations, Payton.
I want to touch up on this quarterback ranking thing real quick though, just before we move on.
Oh, you could go along as you want.
Okay, I certainly feel like you have one is Trevor Lawrence, and then you have 2A, 2B, 2C, Mac Jones at 5. You know, like if you switched around, like if someone told me, okay, Justin Fields is 2, Trey Lance is 4, and Zach Wilson's 3, I'm not gonna be like, wow, you're outrageous. You know what I mean? And like if someone said Trey Lance is 2, Zach Wilson is 4, and Justin Fields is 3, I just feel like those guys are very interchangeable. Now, the reason why I like Trey Lance so much is because he just reminds me of Josh Allen. Very big, very physical, very athletic, and a very, very big arm, and a lot of raw talent that didn't play against a lot of top NFL prospects in college. But going into the NFL, he has all the physical abilities needed to play the game. So that's why I like him. He just reminds me of Josh Allen coming out of college. And everyone who's known me for a while knows that back when Josh Allen was coming out, I thought he was the best quarterback in the draft. And I still feel like I was right about that. So that's why I'm going with Trey Lance at number 2 behind Trevor Lawrence.
That's a matter of insight here for those who may not know. Payton Doyle is the only Cleveland Brown fan I know, the only Browns fan I know. And we were talking about it on his show. I said, I felt, and this is not in retrospect, this was at the time, I felt in that 2018 draft that Payton's team should have drafted Saquon number 1 and Josh Allen 4. Because for me at the time, I didn't see a difference or a huge difference between Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, and Josh Allen. Well, I was wrong because Josh Allen is by far and away better than the other two. So I'll just put that out there. The rankings aren't done yet, though. Sorry, Payton, if you thought you got away, because you have an even harder ranking. Heisman winner Davonte Smith, his Alabama teammate Jaylen Waddle, and JaMarr Chase are all expected to go in the first round as wide receivers. In your estimation, after watching them the last 2 seasons at college, who is the best of the 3 wide receivers coming out?
I think the best of the 3 is definitely, you look at JaMarr Chase's numbers in 2019. What he did was terrific. He had 84 receptions, 1,780 yards, and 20 touchdowns on 21.2 average yards per reception. So he was explosive. And listen to this. I'm going to compare his numbers to Davonte Smith's Heisman numbers. Davonte Smith had 1,856 yards, so less than 100 yards more, and 3 more touchdowns. He had 23 touchdowns on 15.9 average yards per reception. He caught 30 more passes. So JaMarr Chase, a lot of people forgot about him because he opted out because of COVID this year. But he had a Heisman-level season in 2019 with LSU. It's just the fact that, one, you had Joe Burrow on that team throwing for over 60 touchdowns, having quite possibly, I believe, to be the greatest college football single season quarterback in history. That was unbelievable what Joe Burrow did for that one season. No one was going to beat them this year or that year. And what JaMarr Chase did alongside Justin Jefferson, he still put up those great numbers. So I think I have JaMarr Chase at 1. I have Davonte Smith at 2, and Jaylen Waddle at 3 for my wide receiver.
I want to agree with you, just swapping Jaylen Waddle for Davonte Smith. I'm worried about Smith's size. I know, obviously, he is the Heisman, but I think a lot of that has to do, obviously, with Jaylen Waddle missing a huge chunk of the season. I think if Jaylen Waddle plays, like, that doesn't happen. I try to compare players, and at Davonte Smith's relatively small size, and he is a small human being, I am not sure that that sort of production is going to translate to NFL. As a physical prospect, a talent, I think Jaylen Waddle is better because obviously, and going into the season before Waddle got injured, a lot of people thought that he was going to be by far and away the better of the 2 players. But I'm with you at number 1, I think it has to be JaMarr Chase. I think, unlike what happened last season, I don't think somebody should make the mistake and take Henry Ruggs III. I don't know who takes him the first wide receiver off the board in such a talented class. But I don't think somebody should make that mistake this season and, take Davonte Smith. When you have, and I liken Chase to a physical prospect, like I think he played for the Cowboys, a guy named Justin Blackmon. He didn't pan out much in the NFL. He played for Jacksonville, close to where you live. But he is such a physical and such a strong receiver, good at the point of attack. I love JaMarr Chase. There are not a lot of weaknesses in this game. And I think, there are players, positions that immediately impact the game as they come in. Typically, running backs is one, wide receivers another. It seemed that you wanted to say something there. Go ahead, Payton.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if Jaylen Waddle is drafted before Davonte Smith, mainly because in the NFL, speed kills, and guys look for guys who are fast. That's the real reason why Henry Ruggs was the first wide receiver off the board last year, when in reality, there was plenty of other wide receivers that were better than him. And honestly, they were ranked higher than him going into the draft. But because he went out there and ran, I believe it was like a 4.2 or a 4.3, speed kills in the NFL. Guys want guys who are fast at the wide receiver, guys that will just make the secondary look like toast and take the top off of defenses. So I wouldn't be surprised if Jaylen Waddle was drafted above Davonte Smith. But I think that while Davonte Smith is a little bit slight with his physical being, I do think that he makes up with that in heart, and I think he makes up with that in his route running and his skills at the wide receiver position. He has had back-to-back years of over 1,000 yards. Last year wasn't a fluke. The reason why he won Heisman was because it was honestly just a strange year. Who knows? If Justin Fields had a full season, maybe he wins the Heisman. If Trevor Lawrence didn't, get COVID, maybe he wins the Heisman. It was a strange year last year, but honestly, I think that Davonte Smith still is better than Jaylen Waddle, and I honestly would compare him to a guy like A.J. Green. And I loved A.J. Green. I always thought he was a top 3 receiver whenever he was healthy. I thought he was super underrated. I think he made Andy Dalton a valuable quarterback in this league. So you look at A.J. Green, he's not the biggest guy, but he is really good at getting separation. I think Davonte Smith has the same sort of skill set as A.J. Green. Now, JaMarr Chase, you hear a lot of Anquan Boldin comparisons to him.
Yes, I do.
And if he is anywhere near the level of player Anquan Boldin was, I don't really remember Anquan Boldin that much because I was very young, but I remember his later days in Baltimore, and he was still great. If he's anywhere near the level of player Anquan Boldin was, he's going to be the best wide receiver in this draft.
I remember Anquan Boldin because I am significantly older than you, but I won't age myself right now. But I remember him alongside Larry Fitzgerald in that Super Bowl bound Arizona team. And I can tell you, while obviously Larry Fitzgerald is the better player, and I mean, this is an all-time great. Like, when you talk about wide receivers, Larry Fitzgerald is easily a top 5 of all time. Like, Anquan Boldin struck fear in you because of his physical presence. Like, he is a possession receiver that is so big, so strong. Like, it was almost like a tight end. Like, he would just box you out and you're just not getting that football. So, yes, I do like that comparison there. Before we wrap up, I'm going to get to your favorite player in this draft outside of Trevor Lawrence, because we're talking about physical prospects, and none other than, who is better as a physical prospect than Kyle Pitts from Florida. Where do you see Kyle Pitts eventually being drafted? And just remember, every draft board does have all 5 aforementioned quarterbacks landing somewhere in the top 10. So where do you see Kyle Pitts eventually ending up, and who drafts him?
I certainly think Kyle Pitts is going to be a top 10 pick this year. The real question is where. I look at 3 teams. I see the New York Jets, like I said before, possibly trading back or maybe even taking him at number 2. Who knows? I look at the Atlanta Falcons. If they decide to keep Matt Ryan, I think that if you add a guy like Kyle Pitts into that offense, he's going to put up tremendous and great numbers. And I think that Matt Ryan is going to be extremely happy with him. And then I also look at the Philadelphia Eagles. They're going to be losing Zach Ertz. He wants out. He's either going to be bought out, released, or traded. So I certainly think that Philadelphia could be a good fit for him. Now, I also would look at Detroit, maybe with Jared Goff coming in there. You want a guy that would help out Jared Goff. Kyle Pitts would be a good option. Now, they do have TJ Hawkinson, though, who they did draft a few years back, who I'm pretty sure they like. But the top three teams that I'm looking at is New York, Atlanta, and Philadelphia for me.
No, if you're right in your estimation that New York does trade over for that number 2 spot, I don't see him, and I agree with you here now, I don't see him getting past Philadelphia at 6. Clearly, Philadelphia had a plan when they, on national TV of all places, clearly tanked that game, the final regular season game of the year. That was atrocious. And I said, for me, I would have fined everybody on the field. That was not a player to find. Head coach, I would have fined management. But that's another story for another day. Initially, and I know I am on record as saying I do not see a situation where Philadelphia does not take a quarterback at 6, and I actually put Justin Fields there. But now the reports are that the owner has come out and said he does not want any quarterback competition for Jalen Hurts. And I think that's a huge, huge error. But not that I don't like Jalen Hurts going forward, but he needs some quarterback competition, especially for a young kid. But now that we know that there's not going to be a quarterback that can outduel or threaten Jalen Hurts' position for QB1, I don't see a situation when I look through the draft, unless Penny Sewell drops that far to them, I don't see a situation where Kyle Pitts gets past Philadelphia at 6, especially as you said, they're moving on from Zach Ertz. And what better way than to protect your young quarterback, or at least to help your young quarterback, than having a security blanket with somebody like the talent of a Kyle Pitts. So I agree with you with Philadelphia. Don't see them getting past, because I still think Atlanta is going to eventually move on from Matt Ryan for the money owed to him. And I think they're going to move on from Julio Jones as well because of the money owed to him and the cap hit. This is a team that is not built to win now, so it doesn't make any sense, in my estimation, to be paying those salaries. So before you leave, give me that. I don't want an estimation anymore. Give me that final team and the exact spot, because Neil and I will hold you to that for future episodes and online. Where exactly is Kyle Pitts going?
If I'm gonna be honest, probably number 6 to Philadelphia. I don't think he's gonna get past number 6. I think you have Jacksonville obviously going Trevor Lawrence. I think in the end the Jets will end up taking a quarterback. I think JaMarr Chase goes number 4. Then I think you have possibly Justin Fields or Trey Lance at going to Atlanta. And then Cincinnati's going to take Penei Sewell at 5, and I think Kyle Pitts.
You have it there, Neil. I hope you're in the background there writing all this down, because we will hold Payton into it at some point. But we do have to go and wrap up. And as usual, we enjoyed your time. Like, the pleasure is all ours for having you on the show. Thank you so very much, guys. As you think, I'll let Payton again tell you where to find him. But before you go, tell us what's next for you. What's the next episode that we can look forward from you?
So my next episode is definitely going to come out this weekend. I might talk about some Drew Brees. I'm going to have plenty to talk about with free agency, obviously. And I might be releasing a mock draft here soon.
We definitely have to look that. So again, for those who joined late, please tell everyone where to find you, and we will get links from you so we can put that when we modify this episode and put that at the bottom of the channel. But how can everyone find you, Payton?
Just look up the Payton Doyle Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you could get your podcast, basically. YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, at Payton Doyle Show. It's just my...
And guys, if you love Payton Doyle tonight, be sure that we're going to have him back on at some point. Not just to, see if we can rub some dirt in his face in terms of the Kyle Pitts prediction. And that's a joke, obviously. But yes, we do want him for basically NFL draft, and the NBA season is wrapping up. We will bring back Payton at some point. So again, Payton, thank you so very much. And for those who love this show, on Thursdays what we do. We'll be on Instagram Live with our guy Adam Lewis from the What All Season Sports Pod. But for tonight, it has been Payton Doyle with yours truly, Justin Marvel of This Just In. And you can come back the same spot, the same time, same back channel on Mondays. So good night, everyone, and thanks for tuning in.
I don't have a a mark on my face, and I upset Sonny Liston, and I just turned 22 years old. I must be the greatest. I told the world, I talk to God every day. If God's with me, ain't no matter here just the same. I shook up the world. I shook up the world. I shook up the world. I shook up the world.
I said, can I be a legend? Search your soul and answer me this question. Do you think I have what it takes to be great, but still be humble and learn from my mistakes?
I don't have a mark on my face, and I upset Sonny Liston, and I just turned 22 years old. I must be the greatest.
People to the YouTube.
I don't have a mark on my